Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything that I talk about, so be aware, this is your first and only warning that many spoilers lie ahead. Okay, right now we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on July 25th and August 1st of 2023. I was on vacation, so I'm doing 2 weeks here, a little bit of catch up. First up, City Boy #2. Originally published on June 27th, 2023. The main character, Cameron, who has the ability to interface with the city and bring it to life, kind of animate parts of it, to learn from it, to kind of know what the city has experienced in the very deepest and most particular sense. He can just kind of feel objects and become aware of their history and things like that. He's captured by a gang with ties to his origins in terms of how he got these powers. We learned that this gang serves Intergang, led by Bruno Mannheim. Fans of the animated Superman series from the 90s might kind of remember that. In fact, when he comes on the scene, he even is kind of wearing the same kind of color scheme, so I think they're trying to evoke that. But like that appearance of Bruno Mannheim, he's also serving Darkseid, seemingly, in this story, and Darkseid is apparently going to play a significant role as this arc continues. Cameron still has a dark edge, and we see flashbacks of his hard past that may have put that chip on his shoulder, so I appreciate getting more of him. Superman arrives near the end in what looks like a contrast that's intended to go up against Cameron's dark edge and his potentially self-serving attitude, so it'll be interesting to see if Cameron kind of goes on an arc that Superman leads him on to, I don't know, become more positive or something, but I don't mind having him flawed and complex in terms of his motives. So let's see, I really flew through this issue. I'm looking forward to more. I suspect I'm going to prefer binge reading the arcs here, because this issue felt like it barely got going before ending. The story also further suggests that Metropolis is sort of a conscious entity that even manifests as a creature, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I would prefer a less embodied concept under the surface than finding out that Metropolis is like a metal dragon monster or whatever is going on in this issue. It feels a bit silly or maybe pantheistic, which I'm just not into either, but the tone of the book doesn't feel silly, and so I'm still on board and willing to see where they take this idea. Next up is Detective Comics number 1073, originally published June 27th, 2023. I had to catch up on this arc that had been going on for a while before I wanted to comment on this book. It's basically, it involves this ancient family named the Orgums, which are progenitors of the Arkham family name, and the Orgums have these deep ties to Gotham and to Ra's al Ghul and therefore to Batman. But it kind of has a Court of Owls vibe, like, oh, there's this aristocratic old family that has lots of money, and they've been really entrenched in Gotham and the history of Gotham, but Batman didn't know about them and stuff. And so, but they're adding to it supernatural demons and mass hypnosis and stuff. But I still don't. I'm not connecting with it to the degree that it seems to echo or do again what the Court of Owls kind of proposed. I like the writing style here fine, although I wish that the whole issue was dedicated to the story that's being told, instead of having some pages dedicated to a backup story filling in backstory on the Orgums. I also dislike just kind of the concept here. It's kind of like my feelings about Batman going on space adventures. I also dislike Batman on supernatural adventures. I think that a touch of the sci-fi or a touch of supernatural is fine, but when a story is drenched in it, it goes too far from what I want in Batman stories, namely stories that are grounded, psychological, character-driven, emotional, crime drama type stuff, adjacent type stuff. I do like the supporting cast that I'm seeing in this story arc. Barbara Gordon, Commissioner Gordon, well, not Commissioner Gordon anymore, Jim Gordon, Nightwing. I just want, I guess, a different story that's more what I read Batman for, and with fewer parallels to the Court of Owls. Then Green Arrow number 3, originally published June 27th, 2023. We finally learned that Oliver Queen and the kind of Arrow family are in the future, actually, not just an alien planet, but they are in the future with the Legion of Superheroes in the 31st century. And the Arrow family, we learn, apparently causes something called the Great Disaster. So there's a message from an older version of Oliver that explains that he got help in separating the family, which is why they've been apart for various reasons for a while now. Who the older Ollie got help from is still a mystery, but Parallax shows up at the end, revealing that he had helped Ollie, I think talking about present-day Ollie, in some way, but Oliver Queen still at odds with him, very much echoes the climax to 0 Hour way back in the day. And all these reveals have me very curious and on board for the end of this arc and just kind of seeing what the status quo reset reveal is going to be for Green Arrow and his supporting cast. But the moment-to-moment writing does feel a little bit rushed to me. The art feels more bright and simplistic than I would want for Green Arrow. I really see Green Arrow as a street-level character in sort of the Batman category. So this cosmic stuff is kind of a tough sell for me in a Green Arrow focused book. I'm hoping for some compelling new status quo change at the end of this arc that is then handled by a different creative team. I think that's what would probably work better for me. Probably the standout book for me this time around was Adventures of Superman, Jon Kent #5, originally published July 4th, 2023. Jon is still in the Injustice universe, and he meets at this point Batman and agrees to side with Batman and his team against the cruel dictatorship of Superman and the Justice Leaguers that sided with him. And Jon has convictions that this Injustice Superman must be held accountable for his cruel dictatorship of Earth. There's a great character beat in this story that I really like, where Jon is kind of sharing these convictions with the rebel heroes, and he assumes when they're looking at him kind of funny that they're thinking of what their Superman was like before his fall. But Catwoman says that no, he's actually reminding them of Lois. And I love this. This is the kind of thing that Jon as a character needs to have to pull me in. He cannot just be a copy of Clark, who is bisexual. And the book has been doing a great job here of steering away from that overly simplistic caricature, even though that caricature was about all I really saw Jon used for in my limited exposure to him before now. And of course, I should specify, I'm talking about the adult version of Jon, not the child version of Jon that I much prefer. But this adult version, you know, he's got a superpower burst that's kind of like a combo of the New 52 Superman and the Blue Electric Superman. We haven't seen that in every issue. I'm hoping they'll maybe lean into it a little bit more. I wouldn't mind if he went full Blue Electric at some point and just really had a different power set and thing going on compared to his dad. But yeah, so he's got that going for him. He's got convictions that those with power be held accountable in a stronger way than Superman really expresses. And so it gives Jon this contextually aggressive edge, not always aggressive, but this contextually aggressive edge that I think sets him apart without just making him a dark and angry version of Superman. So I really hope that they play into his Lois personality traits heavily in the long run. I think that would really help me to be interested in the character more. I still want a reversion to pre-teen Jon. I think I want some weird time warping story that'll make that happen. But I am more interested in Jon as he is at this moment than I ever thought I would be interested in him since they aged him up. Now, in a thematically key moment, Harley Quinn apologizes to him for being an accomplice to the murder of Lois and her baby in the Injustice universe. And this is another interesting sort of character/philosophical moment here. Harley says to him, Jon, this is weird, but I had a hand in killing your mother, and you, I guess. And I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. And he says, for murdering me? And she's kind of sheepishly says, yeah. And she goes on and says, I didn't think it was Superman. Superman always found a way. I thought it was a game. I didn't think Joker would win. I've never had a chance to say sorry to someone I've murdered before. Well, not someone who can still hear me. And Jon replies, you still stood beside the Joker. And she's like, yeah, I did. And then he angrily says, are you after forgiveness here? And she barely gets a word out before he says, that's not going to happen. You helped a monster. You have to live with that. But while you're living with it, be better, do better, make a difference, help. That's the only chance you get to make this right. And I think there's a couple things that are interesting there. The Oxford definition of the word forgive is to stop feeling angry or resentful toward someone for an offense, flaw, or mistake. And so if it's being used with that, definition in mind, she is looking to him and hoping that the outcome will be that he stop feeling angry or resentful toward her for what she's done. And he says, that's not going to happen. You did this. You have to live with that. Then he says something interesting. While you're living with it, be better. Do better. Make a difference. Help. That's the only chance you get to make this right. Now, I don't want to be kind of like overly nitpicky because the writer may not have intended this, but the whole idea of doing things to make right what we have done wrong in the past, really, we really can't make those things right because we can't turn back time. So is what Jon's saying here is that, like, to balance things out, you do this much bad, so you do this much good, and it's all right? Well, that's not really like the biblical view of morality. The biblical view of morality is that, like, that extra thing that you're trying to do to make up for what you did wrong, you should be doing that quote-unquote extra thing anyway. It's actually not extra. It's what you ought to be doing, because the standard is God's holiness. The standard is perfection. We can look at Jesus to see what the standard is and the way that he lived his life, So it kind of potentially betrays a little bit of kind of like a works-based philosophy in terms of justice and righting wrongs and things like that. It's just a little kind of moment. I think we see a lot of this in entertainment and in comic books, certainly. But since it was kind of a moment here, I wanted to at least bring it to the surface a little bit. I do think, just from a character standpoint, that this scene kind of highlights Jon's sense of, I guess, wanting to hold people hold people to account, because really she didn't murder his mom. She didn't murder him. These were parallel versions of him. They were not actually him. Now, maybe he feels a little bit of a personal attachment to them because of their strong similarities. I can't get into the mind of the writer and what he's thinking is the mind of Jon here. But it strikes me a little bit more as a scene where Jon, his outrage is on behalf of others. And I think we see kind of a lot of that going on in social media, people expressing their outrage at things kind of on behalf of others, they would kind of say. So I think this also kind of resonates with the way people talk about moral issues online today. But it also, I think, kind of lines up with him having character traits of Lois, who was a reporter, but a reporter who sought justice for those that were wronged by those in positions of power. So it's kind of a blend of character stuff going on here, philosophical stuff at play. I think the net result to me is, okay, I want to keep an eye on Jon and what this writer does with Jon in the future, because it's probably going to result in some interesting character stuff, and also will probably reveal some of the philosophical viewpoint of the writer themselves. Finally then, Steelworks number 2, originally published on July 4th, 2023, John Henry Irons reveals his controversial citizen empowerment plan to the super family, where he's going to make it possible for everyone to have the kind of technology to protect themselves that he has created to protect himself, like with his armor. Although he's talking, I think, about some kind of force field technology. I can't quite remember. Anyway, he gets mixed results in their reactions because they're like, no, listen, that's not going to fix the problem. The city still needs us protecting people here. Meanwhile, Silver Mist, as he's called, is an emerging threat that has been given powers and motive by Charles Walker III. I'm not familiar with this character. I don't know if he's kind of a wealthy businessman or something. That's the vibe I get. I don't know if he's an underground criminal that just lives like a wealthy businessman, or if he's actually a public figure or whatever. But anyway, he is an enemy of John Henry that at this point feels to me like little more than a twirling mustache. I'd really like for his motives to be explored more and for him to become more interesting than just a kind of villain. I'm also still not a fan of the super family. It's not that individually I kind of dislike them, but I think cramming them all in the room together again and again is just, it feels like unneeded noise to me in this issue, and I'd prefer that those panels were given to Lana Lang, who is mentioned to be John Henry's fiancée in this issue. And I'm thinking, did we know that? Has that been? It must have been said somewhere before now, and I just couldn't remember, but it felt like news to me. And so I'm like, my gosh, that seems like kind of burying the lead a bit, and we ought to be leaning into that story. They kind of give reference a little bit to John Henry maybe not being in the best state of how he's thinking about his relationship with Lana, but I think that could be brought so much more to the forefront. They're not doing much to keep me hooked with this series with this issue, but the questionable nature of Jon's plan to give free energy and more controversial metahuman level protection technology to all citizens in Metropolis, I think has potential for moral complexity, and hopefully we'll get more of that and Lana Lang in the next issue of Steelworks. And those, I think, are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. As always, I'd love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Remember to check out christiangeekcentral.com for tons more content. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.